First of all, I've never watched even a second of the TV show Duck Dynasty and have no plans to do so. And I couldn't even tell you the last time that I tuned to the A&E network. So I had no particular interest in either entity. But I have watched with some interest the controversy that has swirled around Duck Dynasty and the comments by the apparent patriarch of the show, Phil Robertson. A quick recap. Phil Robertson gives an interview to GQ magazine. They ask him some of his views, and he readily volunteers some homophobic comments. Those comments become a big controversy. The A&E network officials get severe heartburn from reading what he had to say and suspend him. And I gather there's some pushback from the rest of the cast, even today, suggesting that they don't want to go forward without him. So the first thing that really interested me about the controversy was that when I read that he had uttered these homophobic comments, my first question, as always, was, well, what did he actually say? What were the comments? And I found it very hard to find in my newspaper or in a lot of the sources that I was reading the actual comments. Just broad, vague paraphrasings of what he said. And I began to wonder, well, what the devil did he say? And I really had to go searching for his comments. So let me actually read you the comments, because I suspect if it was that hard for me to find the comments, very few people probably actually read the original comments. So he was asked by the interviewer on GQ what his definition of sin was. And Phil start with homosexual behavior and just morph out from there. Bestiality, sleeping around with this woman and that woman and that woman and those men. He then continues with what I'm told, I wouldn't have known this otherwise, is a paraphrasing of Corinthians. Don't be deceived. Neither the adulterers, the idolaters, the male prostitutes, the homosexual offenders, the greedy, the drunkards, the slanderers, the swindlers, they won't inherit the kingdom of God. Don't deceive yourself. It's not right. So having made those comments, he was, pressed a little bit further. And at this point, he's sort of hitting full stride with his views about the gay community. Quote, "It seems to me a vagina as a man would be more desirable than a man's anus. That's just me. I'm just thinking there's more there. She's got more to offer. I mean, come on, dudes. You know what I'm saying? But hey, sin. It's not logical, man. It's just not logical." So if there was any wonder why the audience of A&E would be in an uproar and why the executives at A&E would develop a severe migraine reading these quotes, there they are. A little bit weird, a little bit yucky, a little bit off point. And it doesn't surprise me at all that A&E felt that they had to do something, because this guy was at risk of destroying their brand. So the second interesting thing happened with the pushback by the conservative community. And, one of the first people to push back on this was Sarah Palin. Now, it never ceases to amaze me how people do not understand the First Amendment. The First Amendment simply guarantees that the government will not restrict your right to express yourself. It does not guarantee that the A&E network won't kick your ass to the curb if you make a fool out of yourself. Nor will it guarantee that once you open your mouth, you won't be called an idiot. But that was all lost on Sarah Palin. She goes on Facebook and says, "Free speech is an endangered species. Those intolerant, hating, and taking on the Duck Dynasty patriarch for voicing his personal opinion are taking on all of us. His right to free speech hasn't been infringed upon one iota. He can stand on the street corner and express his beliefs to his heart's content. He can go online and start a blog if he wants to. He can write a book. He can make a movie. He can do all kinds of things. But there's no guarantee that if he continues to make remarks like that the A&E network will want him. It's called editorial judgment, and thank goodness that it exists. Now, it doesn't surprise me that Sarah Palin doesn't get the First Amendment. It did surprise me that Bobby Jindal, the governor of Louisiana, also doesn't understand this concept. Now, Jindal's interest in this issue, of course, is that Duck Dynasty takes place within Louisiana. So the Duck Dynasty clan are constituents of his. Here's what Bobby Jindal says. This is a free country, and everyone is entitled to express their views. In fact, I remember when TV networks believed in the First Amendment. Bobby, the First Amendment does not guarantee that you get to go on TV. It is a messed up situation when Miley Cyrus gets a laugh and Phil Robertson gets suspended. I would venture to say that Phil Robertson's views are a lot more dangerous than Miley Cyrus twerking. But hey, that's just me. Now, a second defense, and you see this defense when you read the comments under all the articles, and people write in, and they basically say, how dare they criticize him? He's just speaking the Bible. He's expressing the truth of the Bible. So this leads to my third point, which is that biblical literalism is a sham. Biblical literalism is a fraud. When people say, I believe this because it's in the Bible, what they really mean is that out of the 9 zillion views that are expressed in the Bible, I believe in X, Y, and Z, and I simply choose to ignore the other 8 zillion things that are too strange, bizarre, or archaic for anyone to accept in the year 2013. Obviously, I'm not the first person to make this point, but the best person to have ever made this point was Julian Bond this year, who was speaking at a gathering in Ohio in May. Here's Julian Bond. Leviticus states that I may possess slaves, both male and female, provided that they are purchased from neighboring nations. Does this apply to Mexicans or Canadians or both? Exodus sanctions selling my daughter into slavery. I have 2 very pretty daughters. What would be a fair price for the pair? Leviticus forbids me from having contact with a woman while she is in her period of menstrual uncleanliness. The problem is, how do I tell? I've tried asking, but most women seem to take offense. Are there any here in this gathering? If so, should they be asked to leave? My neighbors insist on working on the Sabbath. Exodus clearly states that they should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill them myself? Or should I ask the police to do it for me? My uncle has a farm. He violates Leviticus by planting 2 different crops in the same field, as does his wife by wearing 2 garments made of different kinds of thread, usually a cotton polyester blend. He also tends to curse and blaspheme a lot. Is it really necessary that we go to all the trouble of getting the whole town together to stone them, as it says in Leviticus? Couldn't we just burn them to death at a private family affair? I think you get his point. That there, as I said before, are 9 zillion statements that the Bible makes, many of them bizarre, absurd, barbaric, and immoral by today's standards. To simply lift one out because you happen to believe it to be correct says nothing about the Bible and says everything about you. That's your belief. And if you want that belief to become public policy, you need to justify it to all of those who don't share your biblical inclinations. It needs to be publicly understandable. So Phil Robertson has every right to state his point of view, and the rest of us have every right to call them out as foolish and ignorant. So I don't know what's going to happen to the Duck Dynasty, nor is it a matter of great importance for me. But I do applaud the A&E network for standing up. It may be that Duck Dynasty goes off the air. And Phil Robertson will be free to express his biblical views to his heart's content. And the rest of us can go back to ignoring him. I'm Jeff Rowan. See you next time.